So I've got my Hereford shirt on, ready to predict the National League North for the 2025-26 season. This is where my predictions end. I've predicted all of England's top 5 leagues so far. I don't know enough about the National League South to put together a prediction. Obviously, I follow the North because I'm a Hereford supporter, so check up on all the results there. So hopefully that means I'm well equipped to predict this insanely competitive league. I think there's going to be 4 leagues amongst the National League North. I think there's going to be the top 4, which will probably be quite far clear of the rest. We've then got a huge amount of teams, 8 to 10 teams contesting the remaining playoff places. Then I think we've got the middle of the table and the relegation battle. So I'm going to do what I've done in all of my previous predictions. I'm going to go through the teams alphabetically. I did try something different when I started recording this and it didn't really work. So I'm going to go through the teams in alphabetical order, which starts off with AFC Fylde, relegated from the National League last season. They are a bit of a yo-yo club, really, with the National League North and the National League. They've been here many times before. We know they have the budget to compete, and they are going to be one of the strongest sides. I anticipate Fylde being one of the top 4. There's one team that I think are going to shock a few people and win this league title, and if they don't, then I think Fylde will. So I've got AFC Fylde finishing second and going into the playoffs. So that brings us to Alfreton Town, probably the most local of the National League North sides to me, as I'm in Nottingham. Maybe Peterborough Sports. Yeah, they're certainly one of the most local. We've got Alfreton Town, and I believe they've got relatively new owners who are ambitious and hoping to take them into the Football League. They've been in the National League North for quite a while now, and they've been amongst the playoff places a few times. I remember when they used to struggle at this level. I think football in this area, in the Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire area, is on the rise. And I think Alfreton Town are going to have a good season. I've got them just missing out on the playoffs. I've put them in 8th place. But that playoff race is so difficult to predict. Like I said, there's a number of sides. There's 10, 11 teams that could be involved in that playoff race. And I hope Hereford are one of them. So that brings us to the first of the newly promoted sides and one of the most exciting teams in non-league football at the moment, and that's Bedford Town. I'm not sure many expected them to go straight up from the Southern League Premier Division Central. They did. They won the division, so promoted to the National League North. I've seen a few predictions that put Bedford Town straight back down. I'm going to say right now, Bedford Town won't be relegated. This is a big step up for them, but there's a lot of money in Bedford at the moment, particularly with the football. I think they have the budget to compete at this level, and certainly if they manage to get that merge pushed through with Rail Bedford, then this is going to be a force. It'll probably be Bedford United, won't it? I think this is a team that's upcoming, and I've actually got them in the playoff race. I think they're going to be a bit of a shock. I've got them in the playoff race. I've got them finishing outside the playoffs. I've got Bedford Town in 11th. If you're a Bedford Town fan, let me know in the comments. Would you be happy with that? Bedford Town 11th. So Buxton are a team who massively overachieved, I think, last season. They were in the playoff race. I'm not sure how many days they actually spent in the playoff places, but they ended up in the playoffs at Hereford's expense. Although, I mean, we lost on the final day, so we've got no one to blame but ourselves, really. Finished 7th, lost at Chester in the playoffs. I think Buxton overachieved. I don't think they'll match that this season. I don't think they'll drop off that much. But I've put Buxton in 15th. And then we have the second of what I'm going to call the Big Four. Missed out on promotion in the final. We've got Chester. Chester are a massive club. I know this is a Phoenix club, so this is a different version of Chester. They've shown how capable they are at this level, and yeah, they won at Kidderminster in the playoff semi-final. They are going to be one of the 4 big teams this season. I've got Chester finishing 3rd, and I actually think they're going to follow on from last season by winning the playoffs. I'm not sure it really matters who drops into the playoffs. I don't think Chester will win the league. They could, but I think they'll win the playoffs. So I've got Chester 3rd and winning the National League playoffs. After Chester, there's another playoff contender in Chorley. I mean, most of the teams in this league are playoff contenders at this rate. Chorley were also in the playoffs last season. They were in the playoff semi-final as well. They were beaten 4-2 at Scunthorpe after beating King's Lynn Town in the Eliminator. I think this is probably optimistic for me, really, and you'll understand where this is going. But I've put Chorley just outside the playoffs. I mean, they've bounced up and down from the National League to the National League North a few times. Probably a bit silly to put them outside the playoffs, but it's an early prediction. I'm going to put Chorley just outside the playoffs in 9th place. Yet another playoff contender, Curzon Ashton, who are a club that has come on massively in recent years. They finished just outside the playoffs in a really exciting playoff race. I was sat glued to my phone on that day, watching the scores come in, watching Hereford miss out. I think Curzon Ashton are going to miss out again, but again, it's going to be to 3 points in that playoff race. Curzon Ashton 10th, but they could end up 5th. I think the top 4 are going to run away with it, but after that, it's going to be a brilliant race. So Curzon Ashton 10th brings us to Darlington. Darlington finished 11th last season. They were quite far short of the playoff places, really. In terms of positions, I'm not sure they were that far off it in terms of points. I don't think Darlington are going to be in amongst the playoff places again, but I think they're going to have a comfortable season. If we've talked about the 4 leagues within the National League North, I'd put them in the mid-table division. So I've got Darlington in 14th, but like I say, anyone in the top half or the top end of the bottom half is going to be in a playoff race. After Darlington, we have Hereford. So I do go into this with a bit of bias. Who doesn't really? So I'm probably going to inflate Hereford's position. We are improving under Paul Caddis. We can definitely see an improvement. We had, for large portions of last season, we had strikers injured. We did compete among the playoffs, but then dropped out of them. Quite a few changes, players-wise. Quite surprised to see that we let Jason Cowley go. Andy Williams, I believe, has signed a new deal for another season. He probably won't play that many games. I imagine he'll be an impact sub again, as I believe the guy's about my age, late 30s. Still got it, though, at this level. I think Hereford are gradually improving. I don't think we'll win promotion. Yeah, I don't think we'll be one of the big 4. Maybe bias. Yeah, I think we're capable of making the playoffs this year. But if we do, it'll be within a couple of points clear of the teams above. I've got Hereford finishing 6th, and to be quite honest, I'd be happy with that. We have to get the playoffs this season, surely. Very strong league, though. After Hereford, we go just up the road to Worcestershire. We go to Kidderminster Harriers. So Kidderminster lost at Southport on the final day when all they needed to do was win, and they bounced straight back to the National League. They parted ways with Phil Brown at the end of last season, and they've landed Eastbourne's boss, Adam Murray, who got them into the National League South playoffs. I'm surprised to see Phil Brown go, but I think Adam Murray is a capable manager. without a doubt, Kidderminster are one of the top four. I think they will miss out again, though. They finished third last season. They were beaten by Chester. I can see history repeating itself in the playoffs. I think Kidderminster will lose to Chester again. So I've got Kidderminster finishing fourth, and yeah, they'll lose in the playoffs. Possibly even the playoff final. I've got Chester winning the playoffs. So that's Kidderminster Harriers. Fourth, we come to yet another playoff contender who contested the playoffs last season, Kings Lynn Town. Their playoff campaign was short as they lost to Chorley. Kings Lynn are a funny one, finished sixth. I think this is going to be a very close league. Yeah, I've got them in the middle of the table. I've got Kings Lynn Town. They're always going to compete. They've got a decent budget at this level. I've got Kings Lynn Town in 12th, which brings us to Leamington. Leamington are a club that has punched well above their stations for quite some years now. The fact that they're competing at step 2 of the non-league system is impressive. I think this is a season where Leamington will be in a relegation battle. They were 16th last season. Again, I think they will stay up, but I think it almost might be a final day job. I think the bottom 4 were gone with a couple of games to spare in this league last season. It's going to be very close this season. And I've got Leamington just staying up 20th. So, brings us to my pick for the non-league side to look out for this season is Macclesfield. Now, I've said since they won promotion, which was some months ago now, Macclesfield will come into the National League North with a huge budget. And I am convinced that this team is going to go straight up again. It's a tough race at the top with the 4 that I've mentioned. Macclesfield are the 4th of those 4. I've seen predictions where they're in the middle of the table, which is really quite sensible. Don't underestimate Macclesfield and don't underestimate their budget. I've got Macclesfield winning the National League North title. I was worried when they came up. That's why I wanted Hereford in the playoffs and going up last season, because I think Macclesfield are going to be very strong. Macclesfield and Bedford are 2 teams to watch. Macclesfield win the National League North title. If they don't win the title, they'll win the playoffs. They will be in the National League next season, which brings us to Marine. So, Marine, I made a video about the lowest ranked teams to reach the 3rd round of the FA Cup. That was Marine were one of those sides. They're playing in the 8th tier then. They finished in 15th, which was an impressive season. I just think there are several better sides than Marine this season. Like I said, it's almost a blind ranking at this point, though. They might have made some signings that I've missed. I think Marine will be in a relegation battle. They're not going to stay up as comfortably. In fact, I don't think they stay up at all. So Marine are the first of the clubs that I've relegated, and I've got them going down in 22nd. Now, another of the sides, 5 teams actually came up to the National League North last season, with only Fylde coming down. And one of the teams that I think is really interesting is Merthyr Town, because their rise has been pretty special. I think this might be a step too far for them. I wouldn't be surprised if they, like Bedford and Macclesfield, produce a shock. But I don't think they have the resources that Macclesfield and Bedford do. They'll be involved in a relegation battle. I don't like to see teams come up and go straight back down. And if I had to change this, it wouldn't surprise me if they do stay up, but I'm just not sure who you relegate in this competitive division. So I've got Merthyr finishing 21st. I've got a feeling I'll change my mind on that one before the season starts. So Merthyr are the second of the relegated teams. I've got them down in 21st. Among the relegation battle will be all of the next three actually. We've got Oxford City. They finished 19th last season, but for large portions of the season, they were in a relegation battle. They stayed up relatively comfortably in the end. I don't see any improvement from Oxford City, but I don't see any decline either. I've got them in the exact same position as they were last season. I think they are good enough to stay in this league. But if Merthyr and Leamington have good seasons, they are in trouble. Oxford City 19th. Peterborough Sports, one of the smallest clubs in this league, one of the teams that massively overachieve year after year. My microphone's still working. Peterborough Sports finished 12th last season. I think this season they are going to be involved in a relegation battle, but I think they will stay up. I've got them in 18th place, which brings us on to Radcliffe. Radcliffe were one of the teams that annoyed me last season because Hereford seemed to struggle to beat them. In fact, I think we dropped points in both games. I know we drew at Edgar Street with them because I was at my uncle's house and he wasn't very happy listening to it on the radio. We drew 3-3, and I think we might have lost at Radcliffe. I think Radcliffe are going to struggle. I think they're going to be left adrift in this league. They finished just above the relegation zone last season. I think the league is going to be a lot stronger this season. So I've got Radcliffe holding up the rest. I've got them in 24th place and relegated. Scarborough Athletic, another Phoenix club. 13th place last season. I think they dropped off towards the end. They were contesting the playoffs for a lot of the season. I think they'll get into the playoffs this season. And like I say, the playoff race is so difficult to predict. I've got Scarborough in 7th, and I think that'll be a good season for them. So we've got 5 teams left. We've got South Shields, Southport, Spennymoor, Telford United, and Worksop Town. So 2 newly promoted clubs and 3 established National League North sides. South Shields have just got a new manager after a poor season last season. They finished 17th when they're usually among the playoff places. I'm not sure they're going to improve that much. I think they will improve. It won't be long before they are back in amongst the playoff race again, but I've got South Shields in 16th. So we've got Southport, Spennymoor, Telford, Worksop left. There is only one playoff place to give out and one relegation place. So one of these 4 is going to make the playoffs. One of these 4 is going down. Southport will be neither. Southport finished 18th last season. I think they're going to have a better season. Again, could be amongst the playoffs. Probably will sit in the playoff place for some of the season. I've got them in mid-table in 13th. So 3 teams left. One of them finishes in the middle. One of them finishes in the playoff places, and one of them goes down. Will it be Spennymoor? Will it be Telford? Will it be Worksop Town? Next is Spennymoor Town, and yeah, they aren't going down. I think Spennymoor are one of those sides that have been nearly there for a few years now. They finished in 9th, so not far behind the rest of the playoff places. I think Spennymoor, they've shown how capable they are when they reached the National League North, when they reached the FA Trophy final last season, and they were outplayed by Aldershot on the day. But I think Spennymoor are going to have a good season. I think they are going to finish in the playoff places. If my prediction's right, that's where Hereford will go in the playoffs. I've got Spennymoor 5th. To the playoffs, the eliminator would be Kidderminster against Scarborough and Spennymoor against Hereford. Not sure I'd be too confident of us going there and winning. So Spennymoor 5th. So out of the 2 promoted sides, Telford and Worksop, who stays in the division and who goes down? Telford United have been here before. They have bounced between National League and National League North for the league below and the National League North. the last few seasons. They came up through the Southern League playoffs last year, and they've just signed Jamie Meadows from Bromsgrove Sporting, who I believe was their top scorer. But that is one hell of a signing. Don't underestimate how good a player he is and how capable he is of making the step up. And I think Telford are going to have a good season. So I've got them in 17th place, which means, unfortunately, newly promoted Worksop Town will be going straight back down. I think this is the first time they've ever made it to step 2 of the non-league system. I think they've overachieved by getting this far. There's always some teams that you look at and you think this team aren't going to make the step up. And I just think the step up's going to be a little bit too much for Worksop Town. I must admit, I don't know that much about them. Could surprise me. For now, as it stands, Worksop Town 23rd. I think they'll be better than Radcliffe. But I think the bottom two there, Worksop and Radcliffe, are going to be left behind. So Worksop Town 23rd. So let's recap. We've got Macclesfield winning the division. We've got Fylde runners-up. Chester third, winning the playoffs. Then we've got Kidderminster, Spennymoor, Hereford and Scarborough making up the playoff places. We've then got Alfreton, Chorley, Curzon Ashton and Bedford Town, along with Kings Lynn, making up the top half. Southport, Darlington, Buxton, South Shields and Telford, I think, will be mid-table, with Peterborough Sports, Oxford City and Leamington in the relegation battle but surviving. Then newly promoted Merthyr going back down, with Marine, Worksop Town and